like speaking on it. What's up, you guys? We are back for another Do That But Better. And today we've got a special guest, Kate Thomas. So, Kate is a journalist, she is a traveler, and she's a musician. She plays the sitar, like, because who doesn't? And she's also my cousin. But,
Mine
um,
too.
and Eric's cousin. Oh, yeah, you're here, Eric. That's right.
Hi.
But so recently we've been talking a little bit about goal setting, and we've been talking about getting in the right mindset to make these goals and things like that. And me and Kate have had a few talks about um, who you are, like where you belong, and we got a little bit of this from her dad. So my uncle, and he wrote a book on this, and it was pretty inspiring. Actually, we had multiple talks of it um, before he wrote it, and it really intrigued me and really got me thinking on a lot of stuff. And I think that just the idea of knowing who you are, where you are, and what place actually means was pretty revolutionary for me. So, Kate, welcome to Do That But Better.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. And so, Kate, now, number one, I want you to just introduce yourself, and I want to know so who you are, what you do, and where would you say you are from?
Excellent questions. Thank you. So I'm a writer and a researcher. Where am I from? This is a really interesting question, and I was just traveling. I was just traveling in Mexico for a few weeks, and when you're traveling, people ask you all the time, "Where are you from?" And often I'm like, I don't have a quick answer. I grew up in England. I grew up in a small town in England by the ocean. My mom is British. My dad was American. So I always grew up with this kind of concept of being from multiple places, right? And a lot of that is because my dad was somebody who really thought deeply about this context of place, the meaning of place in our lives. He emigrated to the UK, oh my goodness, in his 20s. He planned to go for a year abroad while in college in the US, and ended up completely falling in love with England and staying, right? So he thought a lot about what it means to be from a place, to belong in a place. And I think I've inherited a lot of those ideas. So the answer is that I'm from two places, and possibly even more, right? Because as a journalist, I've worked and lived overseas for a long time. I
Where did you live?
lived in Africa for about 10 years, and I still am working there and spending a lot of time there. So all of these influences kind of become who you are as well, right? So for me to answer that question, I have to honor multiple places, I think.
Cool. Yeah. Now, two things. Number one, I want you to move your camera a little bit to the, I don't know which way, other way. There you go. Perfect. Yeah, you were hiding behind Eric a little bit. um, but yeah, so I've always thought that was pretty cool because, you are, like to me, you were my English cousin, right? And
Yeah.
um, and then yeah, you haven't been there in a long time, or not for long periods, right? Not living there. And so
Mm.
then you were in Africa, and I'm like, oh man, my cool English cousin is in Africa, like fighting Ebola or something like that. What exactly were you doing in Africa?
I do work in epidemics in Africa, so I do respond partly to Ebola outbreaks. Yeah, that's part of my work for sure. Yeah.
Okay, cool. And so then all of a sudden you were in was it New York or Boston?
Then I was living in Boston for 3 years. Yes, which was
Right.
great because I had more opportunity to visit Chicago and see all of my Chicago cousins.
Yeah. And so now you also, all right, so you are a dual citizen, right? So,
Yeah. So I've
right.
been really lucky to have that since birth. British passport and a US passport.
Right. So now you can easily say that you're American.
I do say I'm American.
There
Yes.
you go.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's like, all right, what am I? I'm English. I'm American. right? I live in Africa. I live in wherever. And I'll tell you what, this is something that that I started thinking about, and I don't even remember when, but so so I was the only kid in our family that was born outside of Illinois, right? And so I was born in Michigan, and so and my parents always talked about it like, oh, that's my Motown baby, and like whatever, because I was born in Detroit, and so there was this little thing where I was different, right? And it meant nothing. It meant absolutely nothing. But it if you said like, oh, were you born and raised in Crete? It's like, well, I wasn't born there. I was raised there. And now I live in Chicago Heights. And all of a sudden it's like, all right, were you born here? No. I've only been here for a little bit. And then lots of times when we travel, we'll start identifying ourselves. And depending on where you go, I'm American, right? If you're traveling in the States, I might say I'm from Chicago. But guess what? I've never lived in Chicago, right? And it's like, well, I live in Chicago Heights. And so it's like there's all these levels of who I am and what I am. And we can even take this into just even like physical characteristics or groups that we play in, right? Like, so, oh, I'm a basketball player or I'm a this. And especially in when I talk to people, I get so many people who are looking to be fitter, right? And they're like, well, I was a basketball player. I was a football player. It's like, okay, when was that? 30 years ago. It's like 30 years, like, holy crap. Like, how old are you? 45. It's like, all right, right? And we're still identifying with these things, but not 100% sure why, right? And actually, you posted a article a while ago, and I think I always get it wrong every time I talk to you about it. But so uh, there was, I if I'm not mistaken, it was somebody who was black. They were born in Germany. They were German, right? But they're I forgot what she said her parents were. She was living in New York, right? And she had some kind of ties, I think, to England. So there was all these ties, and so number one, just on looks. So if so, her being in New York and being black, you might say African American, right? That's I would say most Americans would like describe somebody like that, and it's like, wow, she's German, and her mom is Jewish, or like whatever it is, and I think that these things like they hold us back sometimes if we're believing them, whether it's us or them, and yeah, so like when we're like Eric, we were talking about setting goals and things like that, and trying to find like who I am, and what were you talking about with the goal setting of? I think you said something about like, hey, I'm the skinny person, I'm the whatever it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah, like how your identity is tied into like what you actually end up doing. And so if you see yourself as I'm I'm mom's big boy, it's pretty hard to lose weight because now you're losing that identity.
Mhm.
And yeah, like that ties in with this stuff so much of, if you say you move to a different gym
Mhm.
and like I was the strong guy in that gym, but now in this gym I'm not.
Yeah,
So now who am I?
right.
And like just changing that place starts to change your identity or question your identity. And so then you're faced with this dilemma of, do I hang on to who I have always called myself in that old context, or do I grab onto a new identity in this new context?
Mhm.
And or do I have to? Is it either or can I hang on to that in the past and grab onto something new in the future, right?
Yeah.
It's a really strange thing, but the place where you are And the way that you identify yourself has a direct impact on the way that you behave, the things that you do. And, so if you have goals that you want to achieve, you need to recognize, like, who is the person that I have to be to do that? Because you're going to have to change. Like, if you want to change, you have to change. And it is fascinating how location or the context really impacts that for everyone.
Yeah. So Kate, so going to, were you going to say something?
I was just going to say the talk that Zach is referring to is by a writer whose name is Taya Selassie, I believe. And I think you can look for it on YouTube. I think the talk is titled Ask Me Where I'm a Local, or Where Am I a Local? And it was really,
Okay.
what I loved about it was that she was saying, well, I'm from all these different places and I've got all these different influences. And people, when they meet me, they've already told themselves a story in their head about who I am, right? But actually it's different. And so she kind of flipped this whole concept of even being from a place and wanted people to say, well, where are you comfortable? Where are you a local? Where do you feel like you belong? And it's a really interesting talk. So check it out.
Cool. And like, so bringing up place. So your dad's book. So it is Place in Pieces, reflections on where we are. Yes. Boom. Yeah. And so this has been super awesome. And now you had some hand in putting this together with him. Is that right?
Yeah, well, I mean, I had no hand in the content at all. That's all him. But I helped him get that published
Yeah.
a few months ago. So that was wonderful. So yeah, and really beautiful to read and to learn about all these different concepts. My dad actually passed away a short while after publishing the book, so it's really even more meaningful that we have it written down to learn from. But just to go back to the point that Eric was making, I think it's really, I absolutely see this as well in, thinking about identity and place and stories. So I'm a storyteller, and I think so much about, identity and how we see ourselves is really about the story we tell ourselves about ourselves. And, I do a lot of yoga, and that's certainly come up in my fitness journey as well as, well, can I do this? Can I push myself to this point? Do I believe I can do a headstand in this way or whatever? And so much of that is what I tell myself about myself, which I think is really interesting, just that link between stories and identity, and the way that stories and identity are quite dynamic and can shift. And sometimes we think that's fixed, but it's not. There are certain things that maybe are, but not everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Stories, I think, is massive. I mean, like I was saying before, like with the identity, I mean, all of that is just a story. What character do you want to play?
Yeah.
And once you agree to accept yourself as that character, then you start playing that role. And it is really fascinating to watch people as they, especially if you write down like, who are you and what is your role in your family, at work, with your friends. What role do you fill, and are you happy with that? And when you change it and you start writing your role differently, like, everything starts to change. It's weird to recognize the fact that all of that is so fluid, that you are free to change it whenever you want and to whatever you want.
And I love that this has come up, because I was just thinking about place in the sense of if your life was a movie, right? And so all those things that you can change about identity, but also the set. Like, if your life was a movie, where would the set be? Where would you film it? And maybe the set is not actually what feels most deeply aligned with you, or maybe it does, and maybe there are some things you'd like to change about it, or maybe there's somewhere you want to bring into the movie set of your life that you haven't had a chance to do, and there are opportunities to think about what that might look like as well.
Yeah, it's weird. I have a lot of friends who are pastors, and so they get sent out wherever, and like this is a big issue, like something that they teach in seminaries, like wherever you go, like you need to support the local teams. You know, like a friend of mine is in Texas and like he started wearing cowboy boots and like he says y'all now. And it's interesting that in that context, like it is important to be part of that community. And so wherever you get sent, you just choose.
Oops.
Yeah, where did you guys go?
I don't know.
You choose to.
Don't
Okay,
worry, I'll fix it.
It's okay, I got this. But like you have to choose to become part of that community versus like hanging on to where you used to be. Because if you want to connect with a community, like you can't hold yourself separate from it. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Watching friends go through that process has been interesting.
I love that. That's so interesting, and almost the opposite of what I've seen some friends do when they've worked for the US Department of State, for example, and had postings overseas as diplomats, for example. They don't allow you, in most cases, to stay longer than 3 years in a country. And the reason for that is that you might actually start to develop a connection to that country, and that could then impact the way you do your job. So it's really interesting thinking about that, in the role of a pastor, how important and beneficial that is. But in the role of somebody representing America, maybe that could start to be like a conflict of interest, perhaps.
Mm-hmm.
Depending on how you see it. It's really interesting.
That's really interesting. And actually, your dad had a quote in his book, and I wrote it down. So he said, we have to do our best to unite ourselves with the place we are in. This will enable us to experience it to the fullest and appreciate it for what it is and try to make it better. And like you need to, hey, this is where I'm at. And he actually even talked about how it's a great connector. It's like this place to that place. I'm connected from the place I was when I was 5 years old to here by time, right? And it's like, all right, and we all think that we're here, right? So nobody thinks that they're there. Everybody thinks that we're here, right? And so you got to go, all right, this is where I'm at, and what can I take out of this, and where do I want to go? And now all of a sudden you can get together with those around you to make it the best experience that you want to make.
Yeah, and even like that concept, like that idea of trying to make it better in like all contexts. You talk about assimilation, and the way I heard it described is it's not just like you would do it in a gym. A new person joins the gym, and you want to assimilate them so that they fit in with the group. But assimilation is also, it's like the group changes the new individual, but the individual also changes the group. It's like adding one drop of a different color into a paint. Right. That one drop is mostly going to become like the rest, but the rest is also going to change because of that one drop. And so like seeing yourself that way, as you move place to place or join groups, is really beneficial. Where what can I contribute to this new place, and what is this place contributing to me? And also like recognizing that about other people. Like, how do you treat other people? Are you only, if you are a founding member at the gym, are you expecting everyone to change and do everything the way that you want? Or are you open to learning from the new people and adjusting the culture and adjusting your habits to fit the whole new group that's there? Because like one new person makes it a whole new group. So having that mindset of like, I'm contributing to everyone else and they're contributing to me, makes the transition a lot smoother, instead of having this conflict where everyone's trying to make their own thing.
That almost makes me think of like the new year, new me, right? And I think that people think that it has to be I have to be completely different, right? So I don't do anything. I'm going to cut out all carbs. I'm going to like do all these other things. And it's like you said, putting in a drop and letting that be with your other things. And so something might change, something might start to cut out, right? But something else was added, and it's changing, but it didn't throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Cool. And so, all right, Kate, let's talk a little bit about where are you going now? So you just got back. Actually, where are you right now?
Texas, on my way to Chicago.
Oh, really?
Yes, I'm coming up there. See you.
Cool.
Yeah. See
So
you. Yeah.
now, did you? How long you been in Texas?
So a week. Yeah, visiting friends in Dallas.
Oh, cool. And so, how long were you in Mexico?
I was in Mexico in the end for 6 weeks.
Oh,
Yeah.
nice.
And I'm really fortunate with my work. I can work remotely. So I was visiting a few different places, getting to work remotely. I got to spend Christmas with extended family. So your cousins, so who are my cousins? I don't know. They were wonderful.
It's all just cousins.
Exactly.
Yeah. So,
and that's really interesting too.
Who all were you with there? Like Patricia and them?
I was with Letty and Jesus and Juan.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. So actually, let's go into that, because I think this is a fun and interesting little topic. So, we always say cousin, like when we talk about anybody, I think. So even with your dad, I always called him I always called him Sam, but if somebody asked me who he was, like, he's my uncle, right? And he's not really my uncle. I mean, I don't know what you'd call it, like second cousin, or he's my dad's cousin, right?
Yeah.
And so then we're like third cousins or something like that. Is that right? Does anybody know how that works?
Or
well,
like,
he's your
I don't know,
something
cousin, removed somewhere.
No, you were second cousins because he was your dad's first cousin, right? So okay. That makes sense. Second.
Cool. So then we're third cousins.
We are, yeah, exactly.
Okay.
But yeah, sorry, go on.
No, well, and what were you going to say?
No, it's really interesting as well, because I was thinking about that too. I would call your dad would be my Uncle Rick, right? But he's actually not my uncle either. But because he's that generation above me, then he's in the uncle role, So because cousin, you normally think the same generation, more or less, right?
Right.
But it's very interesting, and some people are very, like in England, people always say, oh, first cousin or second cousin, and they always specify. And I would say, in I guess the other extreme, in Africa, where I've spent a lot of time, in many African countries, everybody's your cousin, even if you're not related. You grew up down the street, that's your cousin, and so it's a very liberal application of cousin, which I resonate much more closely with. So a cousin of some kind is a cousin.
Yeah.
Well, and then like there's more blurred lines, because like on our grandma's side, because there's so many kids in her family, she's the oldest, then some of her siblings are closer in age to our dad than to our grandma. And then some of their kids, who are really my dad's cousin, are like younger than Zach. They're like closer to us, but it's technically our dad's cousin. And so because the family's so big, all of that generational stuff is totally blurred. And it like messes everything up.
Right.
Yeah. So then like cousins and uncles are just everywhere all the time.
I think that's huge. Even like just when you start thinking about the titles that we give ourselves, right? And I'm a fit person, I'm not. It's like, what do you mean, right? And how fit do I need to be fit? And how how skinny do I need to be skinny? Or how fat do I need to be fat? Like, do I need a certain body fat percentage? Do I need to look a certain way? Do I need abs? Do I need to be a certain strong to be strong? And just like cousins and relatives, it's just like, well, this is the word that we're using, and it means a little bit of something different to everybody. And yeah, like it's sort of fluid in how we want to think about it.
Yeah, and I've noticed now, because I'm in my 30s and am a terrible judge of age, that like I'll see someone and sort of assume like they look older than me, so they're probably smarter. But now I'm like,
I never
then I
never
find out
think that.
that, yeah, then I find out one, we're like the same age, or I'm older. Even like some of our neighbors, all of our neighbors who have kids, like right next door and across the street, we are all the exact same age. And yet, like, I don't know, they were people, they were a couple with kids in a house, and so I assume they're older than I am, even though we're a couple with kids in a house. I don't know, uh, but like it's just this sort of stereotype that was in my head of like, if you look like that, you're probably older than I am, and that is no longer true. It's like it's weird to reconcile that in my mind of like, oh, I've changed. I'm still seeing people that are all whatever the full spectrum of ages and places in their lives, but I've changed, and so now my way of recognizing them has to change too, which is strange.
I think your dad talked a little bit about that in the book, where you go away from your house for a little bit, and you come back and you see a little change, and you think that it changed, but it's like, but you changed too. And trying to connect those things on what is changing. And really, I mean, we're all changing all the time, right? Do you remember that in there?
I do, yeah. And I think, he talked about that in the sense of watching children grow up, watching, grandchildren grow up, or, if you haven't seen, because my dad wasn't able to see his grandson in Florida as often as he liked, given the distance, so every time he would see him, he would really notice those changes, as you do if you don't see somebody often. And I think, yeah, it's really interesting to flip that as well, as he wrote about, to think about, okay, but he was changing at the same time. Both of them were growing older, right? And
Right.
and the things we don't notice, the little changes we don't notice in the places and people around us. Yeah, it's very beautiful. Mm.
Yeah. Very cool. Yeah. So yeah. So I think we got totally sidetracked. And so
Mexico and cousins.
yep,
And
that
yeah.
went a long way. But so now you, as a English American journalist, right? You were trying to find your place, right? And we sort of talked about that. And like you were saying, trying to find what would that scene look like. So have you decided what your next scene is going to be? And tell us about it.
Oh, you're putting me on the spot.
Yeah. And it's okay if you don't.
No, I'm kidding. It's fine. And I actually don't. The thing about, the beauty of travel and being so fortunate to go to amazing places and spend time there is that often I find that it just opens more possibilities. It's incredible. So I still don't know. I think for me, much will end up depending on work, probably, although so much of that has changed with the pandemic, being able to work remotely for a lot of people, right? So I don't know. I will keep you posted on that.
Yeah. Now, where do you see the idea of place fitting in with health and even just like fitness and things like that?
I love this question. Yeah. Um, Let me think where to go with this. I think in so many ways that is intertwined very deeply, right? In terms of emotional and mental health, in terms of physical health as well, and starting on the former, I think, if you are in a place where you feel good and where you are able to be comfortable and feel like yourself and meet your needs, then you are much more equipped to take care of your mental, emotional health, have the support for that, and then also physical health and fitness too. But I think that not everyone is in that position, and you can still, those things are still, of course, they are the things that you are able to change in many situations. But I also think about, when I hear that question, I also think about outdoors and nature and things like that. What kind of health and fitness does the environment or place you are in? What does that support? What does that look like? You might be in a place where you might live in a mountainous place where there's a lot of hiking or skiing, things like that, and that may end up inspiring your fitness journey, your health journey. Or you may live by the ocean, you may become an amazing swimmer. I think these things are very interesting. And I think the other thing I wanted to say about this was going a little bit more philosophical about it. If we think about place as, our journeys through place in our lives, which my dad wrote so much about, how do we equate that to our journeys through health and fitness as well? My dad wrote about the importance of not getting lost in your lives, but also he recognized that many of us do and have got lost in our lives, and that's just a part of being human as well. And I think there was a part I wanted to read to you about this. One second. Okay. So he writes, of course, a big question is where we are headed on our journey. There is a connection between where we have come from and where we are headed. It may seem obvious, but it's important to think about it nevertheless. The pattern of decisions we make and the encounters we experience come together to take us from A to Z. A is connected with Z through these decisions and encounters. And then he goes on to say, it is this concept of the connection of places which enables us to know where we are, where we have come from, and helps us to have some idea of where we might be headed. So a question to ask ourselves is, how can I be my own guide? And I think that's really interesting when you think about your own compass, right? Like, what feels aligned and right for you on your journey of mapping your own path through these things, right? And what are the influences and the decisions you make, the encounters, the people you meet on the way, the gym you might go to, the yoga studio you might go to? How does that influence your personal journey? A thing I love about my dad's book, he doesn't always have answers. In fact, mostly it's questions, but it's that reflective process that helps you kind of just refine and course correct when you need to, and always come back to yourself and kind of be asking, is this in tune with where I want to be going? Which is a really important question, I think.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I sort of feel like, just talking to you and your dad and even Ed, there is often a very inquisitive conversation. And I was noticing this the last time you were here. So you came and the whole family got together, right? And everyone talked. And I'm like, Kate hasn't said a word this whole time. And I'm like, man. And then when you did, you would say things like, blah, 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 isn't it? And then everyone would talk. And I'm like, son of a gun, here it goes again. And now I don't know if this is just a McGaffey thing, if this is like American English, right? Because actually, like when I start thinking about even just like when like British people talk, right? So if I eat something hot, I'm gonna go, oh, this is hot. And you guys might go, that was hot, isn't it? Right? And it's like, no, just tell them. But I've actually really loved that. Like when I'm having the conversations, and I was like, oh my gosh, I need to start answering with a question, right? So I will just talk. But I think that was it's something that I've learned from just being around you guys.
That's
It's
really interesting.
a nice insight, Zach, isn't it?
Nice.
Yeah.
I wasn't aware of that. That's very interesting, and, and at the same time, I also, being raised in British culture, yeah, I think we are more likely to speak in that way, use those kind of intonations, perhaps show more hesitancy in conversation. I think that is quite a British trait. And at the same time, I really appreciate being around you guys where it's much more direct, and especially, and that again changes in different parts of the US, I think too. But I really, I learn a lot from that as well. But I think to your point about inquisitiveness, yeah, I really enjoy curiosity, and maybe this is something again that I inherited from my dad. But I just think it's really beautiful to just, if you're not sure where you're going, or you've got a dilemma, or you're thinking about how you want your life to be, just bring a little bit of curiosity to it. Like, what would it be like if I did this? What would it be like if I switched up my morning workout to this? How would that feel? And just explore it without needing to know what that would actually bring
Yeah.
you. You can just see where it takes you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not
And
always being
I
in a
think,
place of knowing.
Right.
Yeah. And the fact that, I mean, you have traveled a ton. You've had, I'm going to say you've had a lot more diverse experiences than the vast majority of people. And you have not decided on where you want to land, or like what your favorite, place is. And I think that underlines, for me and probably for a lot of other people, that like you need to go try some stuff. And have that curiosity, be willing to explore and experience more things, so that you can say like, okay, here are the things that I enjoy. These are the things that are most important to me, that I want to make sure are included in my day to day, or monthly, or whatever. Like, these are the things that I want to be surrounded by. Because if you only ever experience where you've happened to land, you're missing out on so much, and you don't have a large enough sample size to really make a great decision for yourself and experience the things that you really love and enjoy. So like having that curiosity is huge.
Yeah, definitely. And I think there are, my dad writes about this too in the book, that there are different ways of approaching that. For some people, they might be really happy and fulfilled not exploring new places. And that's totally okay. That's wonderful. In many ways, I envy that. But other people may have this curiosity, but maybe a little bit afraid, or, concerned, well, it's so different. And I guess to that, I would say, the world, and again, my dad writes about this, is that when we think about home and belonging, well, we also belong to planet Earth, right? Like, this is also our home. And my experience traveling and being in so many different places is that human beings are fundamentally good and kind, and people take care of each other almost, well, no, everywhere, everywhere without exception. And so, I think sometimes there can be that initial fear of not being safe going to a new place, but it is mostly, and I think that also this idea of making sure we're taking care of the world we live in, the places we inhabit as well. There's this very sort of deeply loving message in my dad's book, which is, this rooted in this idea of taking care of the earth for the generations to come. And he writes, have we been good stewards of the universe while we were alive, or have we greedily used and destroyed the delicate balance that has created us, giving those who follow us less beauty and awe to appreciate? Because we don't ever leave this place, we return our dust to it, and it remains here when we go. There is an eternity of life, a circular loop that is the creation of successive uses and abuses of generation after generation. Life is so magical, and abuses of place make it less beneficial to those who follow us. So, just really thinking about what can we do to take care of the places we live in, and our communities, and going back to the point that you raised at the beginning, I think, Aaron. And I think, even while traveling, that's something you can do. So, yeah, it's really nice.
Wow. Yeah, that is absolutely awesome. And I think that's a great place to leave it. But yeah, you guys think about place. And I love, like, even just in this conversation, place and time. You said in a place of like loving yourself, and like there's so many different applications when you start thinking about um, what a place is. And man, the more that you say it, it just keeps coming, and it's like, here's a new one, here's a new one. And like you were talking about, you can go try this new place, but you can always go back home, right? And it might have changed, but guess what? It was changing whether you were there or not. And it's like, it's totally okay. Just keep trying, finding yourself. And yeah, man, I've absolutely loved having this book, and I feel super honored to have gotten a copy of it. And Kate, it was great talking to you again.
Thanks so much for having me and for this really interesting discussion with both of you guys. Yes, if you're interested in checking out the book, let us know. And thanks again for. Yeah.
So are you guys making more copies?
We are making more copies, yes.
Oh, that is awesome.
Yeah.
So cool. Well, awesome. All right, you guys, we will see you next week. Thank you again, Kate. And me and Eric will be here next week, Tuesday at 12, for Do That But Better. See you guys later.
See ya.
Bye.